Hello, my friends. This is Andy coming to you live from Southern California. I am excited for this show because I'm going to learn a lot. I pretend to know a little bit about the Middle East, but I don't know much and about the Muslim people and the Islamic faith. I can't wait to learn from my expert that I have on. You're going to be excited to meet her because she's worked under 5 different presidents in the United States of America, and she's an expert in this area. And I think I'm not sure if I can tell you that she's a spy, but maybe I should not have let that out. But she worked for us, which is fantastic. And you know what you want to always remember is you don't want to hesitate to meet people in line if you're in line waiting for something, because you never know what they do for a living. And this was one of those times where you shake hands with somebody and you begin to talk and you go, oh my gosh, you are so interesting. Do you mind doing my show? And so that's how we're here at this point right now. The first thing I want you to do, though, is remember to go to I want you to go to todayshappycoffee.com. That is the product that I use that gives me the energy, has allowed me to lose a whole bunch of weight. I've lost about 25 pounds over the last several months. And it has, we also have the lemonade. We have the Georgia peach. It's fantastic. And then we also have the Elevate Max, which really is a great appetite suppressant. Sometimes I have to put an alarm for myself to remember to eat. And then, of course, I have the great CBD oil by Viseo, which is one of the top 50 healthcare companies in the world. The CBD is fantastic. And coincidentally, when I started taking the CBD oil and the other products, my sleep just became fantastic. My blood pressure lowered. I got off all my medications, all my pharmaceuticals. So I'm basically pharmaceutical free. And that it just, again, I can only tell you it's coincidental that it happened when I started taking these great products. The reason being is that they do not allow me to say that any of these things actually did anything. But it is a coincidence that once I started taking them, my life completely changed. All right. So right after the intro video, I will bring on our secret guest. This is going to be fun. Well, it's not very much a secret because there was a thumbnail, but I'm going to go with it anyway. All right, here we go. My guest will be coming right after this. Hedieh Mirahmadi, how are you?
I am great. Thank you, Andy.
Are you shocked that I was able to say your name?
I am so pleasantly surprised.
I love your name. That is an amazing name. Does it mean anything? Is there any meaning behind your name?
Yes, actually, my first name, Hedieh, means gift. It's a divine gift. It means the same thing in 6 languages.
Get out. What are those languages?
Farsi, Turkish, Urdu, Bahasa, Arabic.
Wow. Do you speak all those languages?
I wish. No, I just speak Farsi.
All right. Very cool. So we were in line. We were waiting for non-essential, which was at our great church, which is Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. It turns out that we happen to probably sit in the same aisle for the last several months as church has been, and we've never met, but we happened to meet that day. You began to tell me your story, and I could not wait to get you on the show, because it just so happens that I've been talking a little bit about Iran lately and them being our enemy, but not necessarily the people of Iran, but I was talking about the leadership of Iran actually being our enemy, that the people themselves are beautiful, beautiful people. You paint the American flag on the ground over there in Iran, and they walk around it, which is not currently happening here in the United States. Do I have that right? Do you have some knowledge about what's going on with Iran?
Yes, absolutely. It's the oppression from the mullahs in Iran has actually created this patriotism, this love for America. So not only that, it's the fastest growing church in the world. So,
oh, no kidding.
Yes, absolutely. So it's been a great byproduct of that horrible regime.
Well, good. It's kind of. I mean, in a way, I think that you and we're seeing that here also. We have not. They're not the regime, but they're trying to be the regime, and it's causing a whole rebirth of the Christian faith. I know our church is blown up, and you actually have to get there an hour early to actually get a seat. And do you find that same thing? I find that we have a little bit of what they call it, a revival.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's just people are waking up to the fact that if you don't stand for it, you could lose it. And it's something that unfortunately fortunately up until now, Christians have been very comfortable in the United States, and they haven't realized that they need to sometimes stand up and fight. And this is that time. I think we're in that epic battle right now.
Yeah, for sure. So let's, before we get into much more of that, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your history and why we should even be listening to you about Islam or about the Muslim people and what's been going on in our country. So I'll just tell people what you've been doing. I think it's a fascinating story.
Okay, so I grew up actually secular. My parents came from Iran in the 60s to live the American dream. They were immigrants. My father finished medical school out here. But it wasn't until college and later in life in grad school, in law school, that I connected to the Islamic faith. And because the extremist interpretation didn't resonate with me, it was very anti-American even back then, that I ended up in a mystical community. It's called Sufism. And I come to find out that Sufis all over the world were being persecuted as part of this Islamist, which is the political version of Islam, expansion throughout the Middle East and South Asia. So in order to implant that doctrine, they had to remove the traditions that were existing in those countries. And so the more I researched about it, the more upset and concerned I became about it because of the threat that it represented to Western countries. And this is pre 9/11. So one thing led to another. I just spent a tremendous amount of time researching it on what radicalized young people to follow extremism, to leave their cultural normative understanding of Islam to support extremism. And I traveled around the world. By the end of my career, it was 37 countries that I had done research in, basically trying to understand what are the elements that what are the socio-emotional causes, the political, the economic causes of radicalization. And as my career developed, I basically became a federal contractor where I would do this research and consulting and build public-private partnerships to combat extremism for the US government. So that's what led to my career throughout 5 administrations.
Wow, and I've had the opportunity to look at your website and some other things. I see you shaking hands with presidents, so you've been vetted out. Not just because I saw pictures of you, shaking hands, but there's a lot of information. I've watched other interviews with you. First of all, who was the best president to work for? Under.
Wow, I know it's extremely unpopular right now, but at the time it was W. He was. Yeah, I mean, he was a very strong, he is a strong Christian. He was a strong supporter of religious freedom. So he did a lot for protecting religious freedom and espousing it throughout the world. And he had a dream about what he was going to do in the Middle East. It obviously didn't turn out how he had hoped and expected, but he passionately believed in spreading democracy and basically promoting American values overseas. And it was a noble effort. It's just the implementation and the execution it was a runaway train wreck, but his intentions were great. And he was just a really personable person. It's great.
Oh, wow.
I know that's not popular to say now. I know, yeah. But at the time it was.
Yeah. What's interesting is because I didn't vote for him the second time. I forgot who I voted for, but it was like somebody not, somebody that probably wasn't going to win. I will never do that again. But I was in law enforcement. I was a little bit angry, and and I wasn't in the Christian religion at the time. So that at the time, I don't want to say it didn't matter to me, but I guess that's all I could say. It wasn't on my priorities whether he was Christian or not, or what he was doing. Not like now. Now it's entirely different. This is an entirely different world that we live in. Before, I actually want to go back to that in just a second. But when you were going through the different faiths that you were going through in regard to Islam, I always get them wrong, right? We've had this discussion before where I say Muslim faith when it's not Muslim faith, it's the Islam faith. And what was the turning point that caused you to find Jesus Christ and follow Jesus Christ? How did that happen?
Well, the way I describe it is I went into Islam because I was raised secular without religion. I went into Islam because I was looking for a relationship with God. And so my life was going a bit haywire. I was engaged in a lot of destructive behaviors, and I just wanted God's love and protection. And so it was natural to go in Islam because my family was Muslim. And it ended up putting this kind of cage around my behavior. I was a devout Muslim. I prayed 5 times a day. I wore Islamic clothing. My head was covered. And it was this way of protecting myself and basically being able to focus on my life and work. And everything was fine. And then I had my last contract when I was in DC was at FBI headquarters, and it was the pinnacle of my career. It was an honor, and I decided I was going to take my head cover off. And in that process of taking off my head cover, a number of clerics told me, well, once you remove your head cover, you can hang from your hair for an eternity in hellfire. And I was like, what? I'm a devout Muslim. I pray, I fast, I do absolutely everything. I have a degree in Islamic jurisprudence, and I'm going to hang from my hair in hellfire. And it just unraveled for me. That relationship with the religion unraveled. So, yeah, it was extraordinary. As I described it, it was the veil, proverbial veil tore. We have that same reference in the Bible as well as, in the crucifixion of Christ. And so at that time, it wasn't about Christ. It was just about leaving Islam. And I came to Southern California where I was raised, and I just needed the comfort of family. Mm-hmm. And here I went through a series of very difficult personal and professional turmoil. I ended up in a lawsuit with my ex-business partner, and it was just tragic. I was just a mess. And I had no relationship with God that was basically my anchor for 20 plus years. And I just started crying all the time, and I was praying whatever prayer I knew how to pray. I was like, God, could you talk to me? And meanwhile, I'm flipping through social media, and I find this pastor, and his messages start to speak to me in a way that I had never experienced before. And he was helping me solve all my problems. And I was like, wow, it's kind of cool. Like, this pastor is helping me solve my problems. Maybe Jesus is trying to help me because, Muslims have a strong belief in Jesus as a prophet, not as God incarnate. And so I was like, okay, cool, that's fine. And then I just started to feel really confused about who God was because of all the things I was learning about Christ. And so I just put my head down in prayer, in the traditional Islamic prayer, and I asked God to reveal himself to me. And I heard the audible voice of Christ say to me, Hedieh, it's me. And so it was my road to Damascus experience. People that are familiar with the Bible will know that the Apostle Paul had this just defining moment when he saw a vision of Christ and heard his voice, and it forever, of course, changed the trajectory of his life. And it made everything in his life up to that point make sense, because he was to go back and help the Jews understand the divinity of Christ and the salvation and the free gift of salvation that Christ offers. And that's exactly what the Lord has put on my heart as part of my purpose, is to help my former Muslim brothers and sisters understand the free gift of salvation, that they do not have to live a life of wondering and guessing, does God love me? Does God forgive me? They could have salvation and redemption and freedom in Christ.
Can you just keep talking? It just sounds so incredible. I got corrected, and I want to make sure and address this because I must have said it wrong. And this must be common, right? With certain languages and dialects and stuff like that. It sounded like I probably said Islam as opposed to Islam. Is that important to understand?
I mean, it just depends on the pronunciation, but Islam. It's supposed to be Islam.
Okay, I just want to make sure. That jumped up like right away as soon as I said something. I want to go back just a little bit when you because I was a police officer 21 years, and I've been around different types of religions. I've had people that have committed suicide. In the Asian community, it's quite often they use a knife to kill themselves, and they kill a child and leave the mother alive. And there's these moments where people strangely in their faith, really bad things can happen. Out of confusion. When you left and took the veil off and all those bad things started with your business, that kind of stuff, was there ever a moment in time that you thought you were being punished? and that you had done something wrong? Did that ever enter your mind?
Well, I think that's what led to me being open to Christ, is that I was confused about who God was. And I was with my website, my tagline is Resurrect Ministry, meet him where you are, is Jesus Christ came down, reached down into the ditch that I was in, and was like, daughter, it's me, because I opened my heart to understanding exactly who God was, because I had lost that relationship. So as long as I was engrossed in Islam, I wasn't open to it. I mean, I had occasionally people would say to me, you're not going to heaven as long as you don't accept Jesus Christ. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But not enough people did that, I got to tell you. I wish more people had preached the gospel to me. But nonetheless, it wasn't until I was broken and open and felt this longing for God, the real God, that he spoke to me. And I'm not the only one. There's hundreds, thousands of Muslims that are coming to Christ at this time because he performs miracles. He's the God of miracles. He's alive, and he is seeking to bring his sons and daughters back to him. So if you reach out to him with an open heart, he will meet you where you are.
Love that. I could stick on the subject, but I want to go back to you investigating and being a part of identifying radical terrorism and stuff. And you were doing that prior to 9/11. Is that correct? That was already part of your duties. Can I'll probably ask you a couple questions where you can't answer them, I'm sure. But did you know that it was coming? Did you know that 9/11 was coming? Well,
actually, so the community that I was a part of, we ended up in a huge controversy with other Muslim groups, because we had been outspoken at the U.S. State Department about bin Laden being the greatest threat to U.S. national security. So the president of Chechnya, Aslan Maskhadov at the time, had told our community leader that bin Laden was amassing weapons and jihadi fighters across his territory. So Chechnya was, and to this day, this kind of disputed territory with Russia over their independence and not being able to get their independence. And so bin Laden used it as a training ground. So we mentioned this in January 7th, 2001, and it made the news. There was hundreds of news reports, the New York Times, the LA Times, because it created a huge controversy in the Muslim community. So it's not that we knew exactly, but it's something that they had experienced or knew was happening, that he was amassing an army, and they knew it was for something big and horrible.
Did it feel like that you were nothing was going? And I'm trying to be careful that action wasn't taken. That the threat was not being taken serious. I mean, was there people going, "Aren't you listening to me?"
We were called alarmist, and we were doing it for fame, for publicity. I mean, people said all kinds of nasty things about us, that we just, we wanted to ingratiate ourselves with the U.S. government, and so we made it up. And I mean, of course, we became quite famous after 9/11, unfortunately. But at the time, there were 3 Arab speakers in the entire bureau at that time. And it just wasn't something that people were concerned about. I mean, counterterrorism was not what it is today.
I know at the time too, as being in law enforcement, is that even at Anaheim Police Department, where I was a police officer, between the crime task force and narcotics and vice and burglary and robbery, they had their own, they didn't communicate. Right? There was no sharing of information, even in a police department. No, this is my case. I'm going to take down this guy, and I don't want you to have any credit for it. Was that also part of it? The DOJ, FBI, ATF. All those, there was no Homeland Security at the time, so they were not even willing to communicate and play well with each other.
Absolutely, there was what we called stovepiping, where information is maintained in just a particular unit, and it was on a need-to-know basis. And so they weren't sharing information for fear of losing intelligence and covert operations. And there were all these issues that were at play. And then, classified security classifications where you couldn't share documents with certain people that needed to know it. So yeah, it was a problem. But to me, looking back, the biggest problem was that nobody took the threat seriously.
Wow. So then 9/11 happens, and is there any "I told you so's" going on in the hallways of of the State Department? Or like, I tried to tell you, I told you this was going to happen.
Well, it's not more of a "I told you so," but it's like, come on in now. What are we going to do? I mean, I was appointed to our embassy in Afghanistan to build a counter-radicalization program. So that's where my mission field ended up. But everybody just started to scramble. So I spent a ton of time with the NYPD right after 9/11, and it was just scramble. What are we going to do? Who knows what? Where are the experts? Who was talking before this? Where is so-and-so? What language expertise do you have? I never forget when they were deciding whether I was going to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. I'll never forget one high-ranking DOD official, military official, was like, "I'm not sending a Shiite to Iraq." And so at the time they were concerned that because I was Iranian, even though I wasn't Shiite, I was a practicing Sunni, they were like, "We're not sending her to Iraq." So he's like, "Okay, you're going to Afghanistan instead." So it was hard to play catch up. It was really difficult. And I think, I mean, by the time I left the bureau at headquarters, I mean, we were banging our heads against a wall because just all that knowledge that we had, we still had a very, very difficult time changing the culture and the way in which things got done. And it continues till this day, I'm sure.
So just to talk about the difference between the different groups and stuff like that they weren't going to send you because you were a certain faith or, and I can't remember all the names. That's why I'm not saying it. I mean, is it easy for one to identify another very quickly, even though maybe you're wearing the garb that they would be wearing? I know when I would go to Europe, people would know I was American right away because of the shoes I wore. Like they say, "You're American." I can tell by your shoes. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we just know. That's how we know, by the shoes. Is that the same there? Like, you're identified very quickly. It's easy to tell one from the other.
Well, not necessarily physical appearance, though we play a game on the airplanes of guessing the U.S. Marshals by their shoes. But it was more about, we call it a sniff test. Like, we would talk to each other, and after 5 minutes, we could, it's called Aqidah, the belief system. We could figure out the belief system of the person we were speaking to, just based on being a member of the community.
Wow. So you're over there in these different areas. Do you have a story about being on the road to Damascus? Was it anything interesting happened on anything in your times out there that you could talk about? I don't know what you can and cannot talk about.
Yeah, it was in Damascus. So two of the most wild experiences I've had is in Damascus. We were doing some research on groups there, and this is before the Syrian uprising. We got shot at. So I was with a group of people, and we were just walking down a street, and some guy just started open fire on us. And I was just like, "Oh my God, what do we do?" Because most of the time unless I was in the embassy in Afghanistan and times in which I was briefing an embassy, I was on the streets with private citizens. So it was the first time I was being shot at. So that was quite traumatic. But I survived. Awesome.
Yeah.
The second most dramatic was I was in Lebanon doing research on how to build civil society infrastructure in Lebanon that would promote peace and democracy and things like that. And the first couple nights I couldn't sleep because it sounded like bombs were going off, and it was just all night. And I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" And I would ask my friends, and they're like, "It's the Lebanese. We're just very used to that sound after the Civil War, so we light firecrackers." And I was like, "What?" So they would just light firecrackers because it was like a melody they were used to hearing at night. And then I was out to dinner, and then it was a sound, and then you saw smoke and fire, and I was like, "Listen, that was not a firecracker." And then we get a call that the airport just blew up. And so that was during when the when Hezbollah had taken a couple of the Israeli soldiers, and so they retaliated by blowing up the airport, and then there was mad scramble. And I called the embassy. I'm like, "Are you evacuating?" They're like, "No, this is Lebanon. We don't evacuate for bombs." And I was like, "Oh my God, I have got to get out of here." So I organized my own transport, and I was like one of the only, I can't even tell you, they were auctioning taxis. I went there at 9 o'clock in the morning. The taxi started at $200. By 12 o'clock, the taxi was $2,000 to get across the border. Yeah, that's a whole nother. Yeah.
Is that what you paid? 2,000?
No, I paid a friend. I paid a friend to get across the border, and it was millions of people standing like back to back trying to get, and I'm an American. I have no Syrian visa. You want to hear how I got out?
Yeah.
Okay, because it's a little crazy. So there's like this massive sea of people, and I'm panicked, and I was like, okay, so what's the best thing to do? I took my scarf off, grabbed a couple $100 US dollars cash, and just kind of did a little cute girl routine. And I went over and I spotted a guard, and I just waved the money in the air. And I went, and he literally, in the sea of people, it just parted, and the guy was like, come here. And I just did this sad, crazy American girl routine. I was like, oh, I have to get out of here. Please, please. And they gave me a 24-hour visa. So I was able to get out, get to Syria, and get on a plane to Cyprus.
And now you're working as an actress in Hollywood.
Yes.
Woo! Yeah. All right. So I want to talk about this one issue. And actually, I think Carol brought it up, if I'm not mistaken, too. They still don't play well together. Anyway, she put it up on here, I think. Somebody did. I think it was Carol. As we were talking about before, where these DOJ and DOD and ATF and DEA and all this kind of just have their separate kingdoms, so to speak. Did you ever see it actually get better? I know the Department of Homeland Security was created to hopefully bring all these things together. Did it kind of come back together, and then it went right back to where it was before? Because I mean, you got a bunch of egos. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, being in law enforcement and being at that level, egos quite often get in the way. Did you see any improvement or not?
Well, in my field in particular, so I had a very, very specialized field in the last 10 years, which was it was preventing terrorism, but it was known as countering violent extremism. And there was a lot of interagency cooperation to try to build those programs. But so I operationalized the first program in the United States that actually was successful. And so we had research that backed the program. So that's what led to my appointment to the FBI. But once I got in the FBI, it seemed like, there was a lot of infighting between agencies and who was going to get credit, who had the lead. It's an FBI case, but DOJ wants to control the policy and DHS wants to lead in the programs because it's their initiative. And it was just, same old stuff.
So you got the Obama administration and you have the Trump administration.
Yes.
The difference in the Middle East between what was happening under Obama, if you have an opinion, and if you can share, if you have an opinion, and what's now going on with the Trump administration, just tell me. Talk to me, your opinion.
Oh, okay. So my biggest complaint, and I think my colleagues at the time would share the complaint, is the inability to do anything. I think the entire implosion of the Middle East is the result of Obama not taking any action, basically just not doing anything. Benghazi is the most horrific example of that, is not sending in troops to help the siege. And it's just, that was endemic. And it was, I'll never forget this one incident where there was 5 of us and we were a group of experts that were going to brief the president and talking about the threat of Islamic extremism and what the solutions were and how, and it was from the vantage point of 5 different experts we all specialized in a different area. And the president was just like, I just don't understand religion. I'm a humanist, and nobody's going to drag me into a war with Islam. And so I was like, that's all you got out of what we just said? Okay. It was just shocking. It was shocking. We all just looked at each other like, did you hear that? And I was like, yeah, I heard that. I mean, you don't have to be religious to understand religion. So it was just endemic that there wasn't going to be anything forceful or productive that was done to solve the problem.
Let me just stop you there for just 1 second, because I was not even going to ask you about that, because I was afraid that you would not be able to say that. That to me, it says everything. It says so much. And it gave me the chills just that you said it like out loud, that it almost would be like that. You would think that would be like a headline, right? But he was so revered and so like, Obama, like, like, no, you don't understand. And even back then, as little as I do, I go, this guy, there's something wrong. This guy, there's something wrong. And I almost started to believe that he was an extremist or terrorist that had somehow gotten into the White House based on at least what I knew and what I heard from my friends that were in the federal government and that kind of stuff. But that is really big. And the reason I stopped you was not that, is that even and I go to the police department side of things. That's just what I do. But even within the police department, one of the things I love to study is the differences between the different, where people came from as far as a country, as far as traditions, going into a home, depending on what type of person, if it was a Hispanic community that I was in or part of the community, that if it was a family disturbance, that it's better, unless you want to get into a fight, to talk to the husband first. But if you want to piss them off, you talk to the wife first, right? You understand?
There you go.
If you go, I mean, I could go with all the different, Asian and, Chinese versus Japanese to Armenian. That's another one that's very interesting, right? And the gypsies and that kind of stuff, and understanding that. How does he not, I mean, the president of the United States, and again, now I want to get there. How does he not know that you need to understand faith? You need to, that is so important. Whether you believe or not, whether you're a believer or not.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of the greatest human motivators of all time. How could you not, if you don't believe it, you should at least understand it. Understand how it impacts. And I mean, a lot of experts have said that the biggest mistakes that the State Department makes repeatedly, decade after decade, country after country, is that it's secular perspective, not understanding the threat of religious extremism, and in our case, Islamic extremism, that people will live and die for what they believe in. And you have to take them seriously. You have to take them at their word. Yep. And historically, just people don't.
Sometimes the simplest things, right? The simplest things just get, I mean, if you would just do the simplest thing, sometimes that would make a world of difference in the world of difference in the world. That was pretty profound what I just said. All right, so now let's talk about how it's different now. Do you see a difference in what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening under Donald Trump and what his policies and everything he's doing? Is there a difference, or is it just dressing?
I think he's inherited a problem that is almost unsolvable. So, Of course, we all love what he did with Syria, and just saying, if you don't stop this, I'm just going to blow up your airport, and then you're going to see what happens after that. Like, it was so impactful at stopping ISIS and all of the things that Syria was doing to inflame the problem there. But the withdrawal of troops of Afghanistan, we've given so much blood, treasure, and toil in Afghanistan. So many of our soldiers have lost their lives. And I really struggle with the idea of just leaving. What does it say for all those people that fought and died and really gave of themselves to solve that problem? So I'm not saying he's wrong, but I just think he's inherited an almost unsolvable problem.
Wow. I just had to, I had it. And then when you said about taking the troops out, because I thought it was a good move. Again, I'm not as versed and understand as much as probably you do. But I think, again, from my perspective here, is that just something has to be done, and it has to be different, because what was being done, at least from my perspective, was not working and has not been working. This has been going on and on and on. Like, let's see. What else can we do?
Well, so here's the thing. So the neoconservatives, their idea was, we are going to, for lack of a better expression, conquer these countries. We're going to put massive amounts of troops. It's like the Marshall Plan after Nazi Germany. So we are going to rebuild these nations as free democratic nations in the Middle East. And so if you don't do that to its fullest, then you have a failed half Marshall Plan. So you basically invested all of this effort and you did it halfway. And so it's not successful. So then you say, okay, at this point, what do I do? Do I withdraw all of them and then let this problem start again and then go back again? Or are we making a decision that we are never interfering in other nations and let them blow up? We're an island. We don't care. We just close our borders. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it's not something we've tried to its end to see where that leads us. So I can't pretend to have the answers to what's the best approach to it, but I know people that have served in Afghanistan, that have studied Afghanistan and spent their career decades trying to solve the problem in Afghanistan. It really hurts people at the thought that we're just going to, take our toys and go home. It's really depressing. So, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's just depressing because it seems like it's just going to come back. We're going to go back there in a couple of years if we do that.
Well, one thing also I want to discuss on your thoughts on this, and that is you have at least and again, I'm going to put in my own little thing here because that's what I do. It's my show that says Andy Falco right there, the Andy Falco Show, and that is this trying to please everybody and give money to, and just kind of, let's just try to, that as far as I'm concerned, the Democrat, that idea that we're going to bend over backwards for everybody, like, and make, 5 different restrooms for boys, girls, LGBTQ, LMOP. Like, that thought also is like what they were trying to do in the Middle East. My thoughts, where you got to take a stand. And I prefer taking a stand. In business, they say if you try to sell to everybody, you won't sell to anybody because you're trying to you can't please everybody. It's impossible. So you got to pick your sides, pick the people that are, at least in my belief, that are going to be most beneficial to the United States of America. We have to put ourselves first, not globalism, but put America first. If you're the president of the United States, you're the president of the United States. Who are our friends? Who are our enemies? And then being strong against our enemies. Do you think that works in that area, in that region, that you have to have somebody that's willing to say, you know what, we're going to bomb the crap out of you if you do that again, and actually do it, as opposed to threat, and then do nothing. And then, by the way, I'm going to give you, $2.5 billion or whatever it was on a pallet. Right.
But so remember, here we have the two, but see, that's what I go back to, doing it halfway. So in under W, the neoconservatives' idea is shock and awe. Like, we're going to bomb, we're going to level you, and then we're going to come back in and we're going to build an American Iraq. And then halfway through, everyone's like, oh my God, this is so much money. Oh no, we can't do this. Wait, this is still broken. Why can't we fix this? And then everyone's like, oh, the American people are sick of it. They're sick of it. Let's pull out. And we stopped. And then we left it halfway done. And then we left our tanks there, and we left all of this artillery there. And then you see ISIS, and everyone's like, in the Middle East, I'll never forget, at the time they were like, you did this on purpose. America created ISIS. And it's like, no, we didn't create it on purpose, but we left a whole bunch of stuff there. You know what I mean? So we left a whole bunch of stuff there, and people picked it up and started shooting. So then under Obama, he's like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just not going to do anything. And then it just got worse. And then it spread over to Libya. And then it just spread over to North Africa. And it just exploded. And he still did nothing, And so now Trump is stuck with the American people are sick of war. So we're not going back in with shock and awe. And I can't do nothing. So what do I do? It's a really difficult paradox. It really is.
And nothing that can be done in 4 years. I think that he's done a lot in 4 years, right?
Yes.
And to now stop all of that, I think is going to be a disaster. He cannot lose.
Right.
At least let him finish the job. He's built, he builds buildings, right? It's almost like he has a building that's half built. He doesn't have the outside on or the windows on, right? He's got the structure. He's got like the beams up and that kind of stuff. But we need 4 more years to put the windows in and the fire equipment that keeps it safe and the employees and put everybody in place. And then we need to elect him again for another 4 years.
Exactly.
or a son, or I get a feeling by the way that, we know stuff. You could be president. I'll be your vice president. I think we know. Yeah, we've done a really good job.
Let's do it.
It's solving all the problems of the Middle East here. Is there any thoughts that you wanted to finish? Did I cut you off on anything? Is there anything more that you wanted to talk about that?
No.
Yeah, I just really feel like he's, I'm biased because I'm a real huge,
So am I.
I'm a conservative. I like, somebody asked me the other day, and I'm just going to say this. Somebody, and I forgot who it was, and I wasn't able to answer it, but they said, why are you going to vote for Donald Trump? What is it you like about him? And I said, listen, I'm not voting for the man first. What I'm voting for first is the policies and the things that he's put in place, the things that I believe in, whether it's the abortion or lower taxes or saving our Second Amendment, freedom of speech, everything that's been happening with the social media, all that kind of stuff. What he believes, law and order is another one, right? And funding the cops, not defunding the cops, and all of those. That's what I'm voting for first. It just so happens the only guy right now that can get through the evilness of the Democratic Party and the media and the social media and everybody that's trying to tear him down, the Russian collusion BS, is a guy like Donald Trump or Donald Trump. I only think there's one Donald Trump on the planet that could take as much and go through all the investigations, all the hatred, and still they find nothing on him as much as they want to claim all this kind of stuff. So I'm voting for the policies first. That's why I can vote for him. I could care less about his tweets. I could care less about his past, but the policies first. And I think Trump's the only guy that can do that. How does that sound to you?
I absolutely fully agree. I mean, I have this discussion with my daughter, my 13-year-old, all the time. I explain to her the economy, even just his philosophy about trade agreements, that why do the Chinese get to send their imports here and pay absolutely no tax, and we don't get to do the same in return? We're destroying American businesses. Our factories are going overseas. So all he did, he's a businessman. He's like, no, this equation's wrong. I'm going to fix this equation. And then he changed the tariffs. And then suddenly all these businesses come back. The auto industry. I mean, we thought with the auto industry and the clothing industry were gone for good. He brought them back. I mean, it was simple, but it was remarkable what he did, that he had the courage to do it. Everyone's like, you can't do that. You can't do that. It's against the policy. It's the way it's against basically the new world order. So I could definitely say as a Christian, I'm voting for biblical values. He stands on the principles that defend my family and my future, and the principles that this country was founded on. And we're in an epic battle that we have not seen the likes of since the Civil War. And it's up to Christians to say, you know what, this matters enough that we're going to stand up and fight for it.
Right. And they were moving, and they were, and a little bit slower, working towards globalism, which is not good. I had a question here that I saw. Oh, somebody said we were 100%. That was about 13 minutes ago. We were talking about something. So at least we're 100%. That's awesome. I'm supposed to ask you about the plan. Do you know about the plan?
The plan? It depends. Which plan are we talking about?
I don't know. I'm supposed to ask you about the plan. Maybe Carol can go into more detail. Carol and I worked together at Anaheim Police Department years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, she was she was a great person to work with. Very good. I'm
curious, what plan?
I know, me too. I saw that earlier, and I go, I can't wait to ask, because I figured you would know. You've been so smart on everything else.
Yeah, well, I mean,
how dare you?
It just depends on which plan. There's a lot.
I think it's just a comment. President Trump has gotten 50 plus hostages from the region and working on getting the rest back.
Yes, that's another unbelievable thing that he did that Obama also refused to do, is just doing whatever it takes to get American citizens back, and making sure that he put all of the resources of the U.S. government, whether it's special ops guys, State Department diplomatic negotiations, our think tanks, our nonprofit institutions, to fight for the release of American prisoners is just extraordinary. It's huge.
Right. Well, Carol said the Muslim plan, and the only thing I'm thinking, and I don't know if this rings a bell with you or not, but when I watched Trump Card and the imam that was interviewed talking about that their plan is to come into America and slowly begin to take over, and I think I mentioned it to you the other day, is that the only reason they've chosen the Liberal Party is because they're stupid, those are his words. And the Republicans, the conservatives, have morals and a conscience, and that's why. And they're afraid of people with moral and conscience. That they put Omar Ula, what's her name again? Omar, yeah, that evil person, and put her in place because she is the ticket. She's like she's their ticket into the U.S. government and start to get in there. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. So what maybe Carol's referring to is the cultural jihad of the Islamist groups. And so basically what the idea is that we will not conquer America by the sword. It's not by the sword that we do it. We do it through a cultural, basically a cultural onslaught on American values. And so I think why we hear the decrease in homegrown radical extremists or homegrown radical terrorists right now is because we're tearing ourselves apart. Americans are tearing themselves apart, and all the Muslims need to do, the extremists, is ally themselves to BLM and Antifa and all of these movements, and they will hijack and take advantage of them when the time is right. It's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We'll sort it out later. So it's a very comfortable spot for them because that's exactly the socialist Marxist agenda is exactly what the Islamist agenda is. Destroy the foundation of American values, and it becomes ripe for the overthrow. And so this is like winning the lotto for him. You know, that it's basically being done for them. And it's extremely, I'll never forget, because I've done countless numbers of training around the country, around the world on this threat. And I often got kind of like, oh, it's ridiculous. Nothing can ever happen to America. Like a bunch of guys with towels on their heads are going to come and conquer America. And nobody could understand that. Nobody could have seen this, that there would be other groups and other forces, other Americans that would pave the way for the Islamic extremists to rise. And so I still think socialism and Marxism is the greatest threat, but you never know whether the Islamist movement will be able to overpower that in the future. I mean, I always tell people, remember, Rome fell too. So don't think that America, and our pastor said it the other day, America is not in the Bible and America will fall at some point. And so it was extremely shocking to hear. But if we don't fight for what we believe in and the values, I wrote an op-ed about this as well. I said that one thing resoundingly that Muslims often say about Christians is they're weak and they're not willing to die for their faith. And those are two things that should never be said about a Christian. Because if you really understand the Bible, Old and New Testament, adherence to God, whether it was in the Old Testament or under Christ, you have to be willing to die. You pick up your cross and you carry it. You have to be willing to die for what you believe in. And the fact that American Christians think that that's no longer part of the doctrine is, I think, what could potentially paralyze us the most.
Wow. That's how I normally end my show, was telling people that you got to understand that we're in a fight. This is a war that we are entering into. And
choose this day who you will follow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have people that tell me all the time, well, you know what? I might cost me a couple customers if I speak out. I may lose some business. I may lose a family member. You don't understand. You're not getting what is happening right now. And I've tried to talk to them. We definitely have to do this again, if you don't mind, if that's okay with you.
Anytime.
I figured we could have like Muslim Mondays or something like that. You know. Have you ever been presented with Muslim Mondays? No? Has that not ever entered your mind?
Yeah, just as long as you're not referring to me when you say Muslim Mondays.
No, but it gives us a chance to talk about, this stuff. The plan, I think, the teaching you said you taught some around the world on this subject matter. I think this would be a great topic to go over, whether it's over, one session or several sessions. I've been drinking water. I promise. That's all I've been drinking is water. But I think this is really good. I really enjoyed this talk. This has been something else. I can't wait to watch it myself. and see how fantastic we are. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Hedieh.
for having me. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And thank you to everybody that was watching. Make sure and share. You know, the problem is that my shows have gone from 12,000. I think I had a show that had 50,000 early on in the early stages and dropped down. It's just been throttled. I actually took some images from Twitter. All my Twitter broadcasts of these shows, not all of them, a majority of them are all blocked. They all have the little gray
shadow banning.
What's that?
Shadow banning, it's called.
Yeah, shadow banning. So they've been shadow banning my my shows. So I need you to share, and I need you to go to my podcast. My podcast, The Andy Falco Show. Go podcast.com, The Andy Falco Show podcast.com. I have it down here somewhere. I should have brought it up earlier, and I didn't. Never mind. The Andy Podcast Show. There it is. Right there. All right, go to the Andy Falco podcast.com. It's on iHeartRadio. Subscribe, because I'm not sure what's going to happen. I mean, already people on YouTube are being they're closing down conservative YouTube channels. I've had many things blocked. Again, Twitter's is shadow banning my my show. So I would love it, because we want to bring Hedieh back and have her talk more about the subject matter. This has been great. This is even better than I thought. And again, I'm telling you,
if you don't mind, can I also make a plug for my website? It's Resurrect Ministry.
Oh, is that why you're on the show? Is to plug your website? No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The website is resurrectministry.com, and I have tons of content there where I've talked about the difference, why I left Islam, Jesus is a solution to Islamic terrorism, my own personal history, and what I would like more than anything is to be a resource for people. If they have friends that they're trying to introduce Christ to them, to Muslims, or they have family members, whatever it may be, you can contact me in the comment section, and I answer all of those personally. So I'd be happy to help lead people to the Lord. All you have to do is ask. That's
awesome. All right. So you see her URL right below her name, resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com. All right, my friends, I've enjoyed this. God bless you. I love you guys for watching. Please share. And this has been fantastic. So thank you very much, Hedieh. I appreciate it very much. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.